complaining about the interrupted quarterly review. "Someone call an ambulance," a distant voice said as my knees buckled. Time fragmented after that, ceiling lights streaking past, the metallic rattle of the gurney, an oxygen mask pressed against my face. The paramedics' calm questions I couldn't answer through waves of agony. "Suspected internal hemorrhage," a doctor explained hours later. "We need immediate surgery before her condition deteriorates further." I'd followed company protocol when I moved to this city 3 months ago, listing my direct supervisor as my emergency contact. No family nearby, no close friends yet. The nurse nodded and stepped away to make the call as medical staff prepped surgical instruments. Through the haze of pain medication, I heard one side of the conversation. "This is Northeast Memorial. Your employee, Merrick Ellis, has been brought in with a medical emergency requiring immediate surgery." A pause. "Sir, she needs someone to authorize." Another pause. "I understand today is important, but this is potentially life-threatening." The nurse's expression tightened. "I'll inform her you can't leave the company retreat." "Yes, I'll update you tomorrow." She returned, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal a flash of disgust. "Your boss says he's in the middle of his keynote address and can't step away. He asked if we could call him tomorrow with an update." The irony wasn't lost on me, even through my pain-fogged mind. I'd spent 6 weekends arranging that very retreat, created the schedule he was following, written talking points for the keynote he couldn't interrupt. "Can you sign your own consent forms?" the nurse asked gently. I scrawled my signature as tears tracked down my temples, disappearing into my hair. The anesthesiologist counted backward. 10, 9, 8. I faded into unconsciousness completely alone. 8 days and 1 dangerous intestinal rupture later, I was discharged. No visitors had come. No flowers arrived. My inbox contained only automated task reminders and past due notices. When I finally returned to the office 2 weeks after my collapse, I found someone else sitting at my desk. My awards and certifications had been removed, later discovered stacked in a supply closet, my ongoing projects redistributed. Roe noticed me standing in the doorway of my former workspace around noon. "Ah, you're back," he said, glancing up briefly from his tablet. "The monthly analytics summary is due tomorrow. Your temporary replacement couldn't decipher your system." "No, how are you feeling?" No acknowledgement of my near-death experience, just immediate demands for work. That evening, watching water stream over the angry red line bisecting my abdomen, something shifted inside me. A clarity I had never known before crystallized in my mind. If you're finding this story relatable or it's sparking something inside you, take a second to hit like and subscribe. Trust me, where this journey goes next might change how you think about loyalty in the workplace forever. My name is Merrick Ellis. Before my emergency surgery, I was the logistics coordinator who made impossible things happen. The person who stayed until midnight finalizing presentations others would deliver. The employee who canceled personal plans when something urgent arose, which it always did. I joined my company after graduating with honors and a dual degree in business administration and marketing. My natural talent for streamlining processes quickly made me indispensable, or so I thought. Growing up as the oldest of 4 with a single mother, I learned responsibility early. While other teenagers complained about curfews, I was helping with homework, making dinners, and working part-time to contribute to bills. This translated to my professional life. I handled problems without complaint and anticipated needs before they were voiced. My mother used to say, "Merrick, your heart's too big for your own good." She wasn't wrong. My relationship with Roe began promisingly. He recognized my abilities and gave me increasingly challenging assignments. I thrived under pressure, viewing his standards as professional development rather than exploitation. When the position opened in the city office, Roe personally recommended me. "This is your chance to shine," he'd said. "I need someone I can trust there." I rented a small apartment, leaving behind my support network for this opportunity. The move emptied my savings, but I believed in the investment. 6 months of exemplary performance would lead to a promotion. Roe had hinted as much. Those first 3 months, I worked tirelessly. I revitalized stagnant client relationships, created new tracking systems, generated comprehensive reports others relied upon but never acknowledged. The annual retreat became my proving ground. Traditionally a logistical nightmare, I volunteered to coordinate it entirely. Securing the venue, arranging accommodations, scheduling speakers, preparing materials, I handled everything while maintaining my regular workload. 3 ideas I'd presented during planning sessions mysteriously appeared in Rowe's keynote presentation as his own innovative thinking. I swallowed my frustration, focusing on the bigger picture. This wasn't about credit, it was about results, or so I told myself. The morning of my collapse, I'd been pushing through excruciating pain for hours. The presentation I was giving showcased weeks of research, analysis that would save the company thousands while improving client satisfaction. Even as my body betrayed me, my mind was fixed on not letting the team down. After returning from the hospital, I discovered the temporary replacement had been given credit for completing my analysis. My name removed from the report entirely, the savings already being celebrated as a departmental win. That first day back, a colleague named Pax stopped by my reassigned desk. "Everyone was shocked when you collapsed," she said, lowering her voice. "We kept asking Rowe for updates, but he said you were fine and would be back soon. We didn't know it was serious until Junia from accounting bumped into a nurse friend who mentioned you were in intensive care. Did anyone try to visit?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Pax looked uncomfortable. "Rowe said you weren't accepting visitors, that you wanted privacy." I hadn't said that. No one had asked me. "The thing is," Pax continued, "when we learned you were actually in critical condition, several of us questioned why we weren't informed. Rowe got defensive, said we needed to focus on work, not gossip. That evening, I researched emergency contact protocols and employer responsibilities. I discovered that while my company wasn't legally obligated to drop everything for my medical emergency, the ethical lapse was glaring. More importantly, I found patterns of similar situations across industries and solutions implemented by companies who actually valued their employees. For the next 2 weeks, I arrived at work 30 minutes early each day. I organized ongoing projects with meticulous attention to detail. I created comprehensive guides for processes only I fully understood. I introduced colleagues to key contacts and transferred knowledge with professional thoroughness. "You seem remarkably dedicated since your return," Rowe commented, completely misinterpreting my actions. What remained invisible to him? My lunch meeting with our most significant client, whose account generated 40% of company revenue. The client whose business I had secured through relationships I'd cultivated. The client who had expressed concerns about inconsistent service during my absence. He remained unaware of my conversation with the Industry Standards Committee, where I now served as an advisory member. Unaware of my meeting with legal experts about liability questions regarding designated emergency contacts. Unaware of my detailed account of workplace practices I had experienced. Doubt occasionally surfaced. When Rowe mentioned possibly including me in leadership training next quarter. When he actually asked how my recovery was progressing 3 weeks after the fact. When colleagues mentioned how much they had struggled without my expertise, but each twinge from my healing incision reinforced my resolve. I remembered signing consent forms alone, knowing nobody was coming to support me during the most frightening moment of my life. I recalled the nurse's words as she helped me to the bathroom post-surgery. "Your emergency contact asked if we could email updates instead of calling. Said he was too busy for regular phone check-ins." While I methodically prepared for my departure, I noticed concerning patterns throughout the company. Employees worked through illnesses rather than face Rowe's disappointment. People avoided taking legitimate personal days. A culture of martyrdom prevailed, with those sacrificing the most receiving the least support when crises struck. "Did you hear about Tamlin in accounting?" Pax whispered one afternoon. His daughter was hospitalized last week, and he requested a day off to be with her. Rowe told him to manage his priorities, and implied the quarterly review was more important. The final confirmation came during a meeting where Rowe presented my streamlined client communication strategy, something I'd developed during late nights and weekends, without a single mention of my contribution. Watching colleagues nod appreciatively at ideas they didn't know were mine, I felt an odd sense of peace wash over me. My decision was made. On Thursday, I completed all outstanding tasks. My workspace was immaculately organized, every file perfectly arranged, every project status clearly documented. The only item remaining on my otherwise cleared desk was a single folded note. I placed my access badge beside it, took one last look around the office, and walked out quietly at 5 p.m. No one noticed I carried a small box containing my personal items. No one realized it was the last time they would see me in that building. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications. First came confused messages from colleagues, then increasingly urgent texts from Ro. Finally, a voicemail that began with anger, but ended with something approaching panic. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I prepared for my first day at my new position, one that would fundamentally change the power dynamic between me and the man who had deemed a keynote speech more important than my life. The morning of my first day at Palmer Innovations dawned with a soft golden light filtering through my bedroom curtains. My alarm sounded at 6:30 a.m., but I'd been awake since 5, mentally rehearsing my introduction to the team. This opportunity had emerged unexpectedly, or perhaps it was simply the universe's timing. 2 weeks before my departure from Ro's company, I'd attended an industry conference. Originally, Ro was scheduled to present our client satisfaction metrics, but he delegated the task to me last minute, claiming a scheduling conflict. What he meant was a golf game with potential investors. At that conference, I met Constance Palmer, founder and CEO of Palmer Innovations. She approached me after my presentation, impressed by both the metrics and my delivery. "Your analysis shows remarkable insight," she'd said. "Most people track numbers. You understand the people behind them." We exchanged business cards, and I thought little of it. Networking was part of the job. But when I was lying in my hospital bed, a text arrived from her. "Heard you were unwell. My sister's a surgeon at Northeast Memorial. Anything you need?" That simple message of genuine concern from someone who barely knew me highlighted the callousness of Ro's response. After my recovery, we met for coffee. What I'd planned as a brief catch-up turned into a 3-hour conversation about business philosophy, client relationships, and workplace culture. By the end, she'd offered me a position as Director of Client Strategy, a significant promotion from my previous role. "We need someone who understands that business is ultimately about people," Constance explained. "Technical skills can be taught. Empathy and insight like yours are much rarer." I accepted on the spot, negotiating a start date that would allow me to properly transition my responsibilities at my current job, though not for the benefit of Ro. My colleagues deserved better than to be left scrambling. Now, as I dressed for my first day, selecting a deep blue suit that complemented my auburn hair, I received the first panicked call from Harriet, our biggest client at my former company. "Merrick, thank goodness you answered. We have the quarterly review with Ro today, and he's completely unprepared, claims he can't find your notes or background materials." I kept my voice neutral. "I left comprehensive documentation on the shared drive, Harriet. The folder is labeled Harriet Quarterly, Complete Materials." "Well, he's saying it's not there or it's corrupted or something. The meeting's in 3 hours." "That's concerning," I said, applying a touch of lipstick. "Have you considered reaching out to Palmer Innovations? I've heard excellent things about their client services team." A pause. "You know someone there?" "You could say that. I started as their Director of Client Strategy this morning." Another, longer pause. "I didn't know you'd left. It's my first day." I left a detailed transition memo. "Ro never mentioned it," Harriet said, her voice hardening. "He told us yesterday everything was proceeding as normal." "Interesting," I replied. "I submitted my resignation 2 weeks ago." The conversation ended with Harriet requesting my new contact information and mentioning that perhaps it was time to explore options. I arrived at Palmer Innovations 15 minutes early, greeted by Constance herself. The office culture difference was immediately apparent. People looked up and smiled. Conversations flowed naturally. No one appeared haunted by looming deadlines or unreasonable demands. My new office, with an actual door and window, contained a welcome basket with local treats, a plant, and cards signed by my new team members. The contrast to my former workplace was so stark I almost felt disoriented. As Constance introduced me around, My phone buzzed continuously with messages from Ro. I silenced it without looking. By noon, 3 more clients from my previous company had somehow obtained my new contact information. By 3 o'clock, Ro had called 17 times. I focused instead on meeting my new team, learning about ongoing projects, and beginning to formulate strategies for growth. When I mentioned certain challenges that resonated with my experience at the previous company, Constance listened attentively. We should establish clearer emergency protocols, I suggested during an orientation meeting. Ensure employees have appropriate support systems in place, especially those who've relocated. Constance nodded thoughtfully. Personal experience? You could say that. Proposal on my desk by next week, she said without hesitation. Budget won't be an issue for employee safety. The validation of being heard, truly heard, nearly brought tears to my eyes. At 5 o'clock, as I was organizing my new workspace, Constance knocked on my doorframe. Dinner? First day tradition. Teams heading to Lily's around the corner. In my previous position, I'd worked until 8 most nights. The concept of a team dinner to welcome a new member was completely foreign. I'd love to, I replied, gathering my things. As we walked out together, my phone rang again. Ro's number. This time, I answered and put it on speaker so Constance could hear. Merrick, where the hell are you? Harriet's threatening to pull her account. What did you say to her? Hello, Ro. I'm leaving my office with my new CEO. It's my first day at Palmer Innovations. Silence. I left a detailed note explaining my departure. I'm surprised you're calling now, considering you couldn't be bothered to leave your keynote when I was rushed into emergency surgery. Constance's eyebrows shot up, but she remained silent. That's completely different, Ro sputtered. That was a critical company event. You've compromised client relationships. You're violating your contract. Actually, I've reviewed my contract thoroughly with legal counsel. There's no non-compete clause that prevents me from accepting this position, and I've maintained all confidentiality requirements. As for client relationships, I simply answered truthfully when they called me directly. You need to fix this, he demanded. Call Harriet back. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. No, Ro. I don't work for you anymore. This is the consequence of your choices. Remember when the nurse called to tell you I needed emergency surgery, and you said you couldn't leave the retreat? Well, I couldn't stay at a company where employees are valued less than presentations. I ended the call as Constance held the door for me. Emergency surgery? She asked quietly as we walked. Intestinal rupture. Nearly died. He never visited. Told the nurse to email updates because calls were inconvenient. Constance stopped walking. That's not just poor management. That's inhuman. Hence my current employment status, I said with a small smile. Well, his loss is definitely our gain, she replied, but her expression had hardened. Though I suspect he hasn't realized the full extent of his loss yet. She was right. He hadn't, but he would soon. The next morning, my former colleagues began reaching out, first Pax, then others. Word had spread about my departure, and the office was in chaos. Ro had apparently called an emergency meeting, raging about loyalty and betrayal while desperately trying to placate Harriet and other major clients. He keeps saying you sabotaged him, Pax reported, but Harriet's team found your transition documents exactly where you said they'd be. They were comprehensive and perfectly organized. It's making him look worse. I felt a momentary twinge of doubt. Was I being vindictive? Had I crossed a line? Then Pax added, Oh, and he's saying your medical emergency wasn't that serious and you're being dramatic about the whole thing. My doubt evaporated. By the end of my first week at Palmer, 7 former colleagues had applied for open positions. 2 had been hired. 3 major clients had requested meetings with me to discuss their options. The Industry Standards Committee had launched an investigation into workplace safety practices, using my former company as a case study. Ro's world was unraveling thread by thread, not because I was actively pulling, but because once the first thread came loose, the structural weaknesses in his leadership became impossible to ignore. Then came the moment I hadn't anticipated, doubt from an unexpected source. My mother called on Sunday evening. Merrick, honey, I'm worried about you. Your former boss called me. My blood ran cold. He what? Said you've been making false accusations. that you abandoned clients and violated company policies. He wanted me to talk some sense into you. Mom, how did he even get your number? Said he found it in your emergency contact update forms. Asked if I knew how serious your surgery really was. Implied you'd exaggerated. The violation of privacy was stunning. The manipulation even worse. Mom, I nearly died. The doctor can confirm that. And I left everything properly documented. He's desperate because clients are leaving. She sighed. I believe you, honey. But he seemed so concerned about your professional reputation. Said he could still smooth things over if you'd reconsider. For the first time since my plan began unfolding, I felt a flicker of fear. Roe was becoming unpredictable. Desperate people make dangerous choices. Mom, please block his number. What he's doing isn't normal or professional. Thing. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, watching shadows lengthen across the floor as evening fell. Had I underestimated Roe? Would he escalate further? Had I put my family at risk by opposing him? The next morning, I arrived at Palmer to find Constance waiting by my office. We need to talk, she said, her expression grave. Your former employer reached out to me directly. My stomach dropped. What did he say? He implied you stole proprietary information, suggested we could face legal action for hiring you, claimed you were under performance review before leaving. None of that is true, I said, hands trembling slightly. I can prove it. I know, Constance replied calmly. His desperation was transparent. But I wanted you to know he's escalating. This isn't just about lost clients anymore. He's trying to damage your reputation. What should we do? Not we. The company has already responded through legal channels. This is about what you want to do. His behavior toward you specifically has crossed several lines. I considered my options carefully. Confrontation wasn't my natural inclination. I preferred systems and solutions to direct conflict. But sometimes, the only way forward is through. I need to end this definitively, I said finally. Not just for me, but for everyone still working there. Constance nodded. Whatever you need, you have our full support. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first to a labor attorney who specialized in workplace harassment, the second to the board member who had personally thanked me for my work on the company retreat, unaware that Roe had been contacted during my medical emergency. The third to Harriet, who had been waiting for exactly this conversation. The pieces were in place. Now I just needed to wait for the right moment, which came sooner than expected. 2 days later, Roe appeared in the Palmer Innovations lobby, demanding to see me. Security called up, and against Constance's advice, I agreed to meet him in a conference room, with security cameras running and a witness present. He looked disheveled, his normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his tie hung slightly askew. You've gone too far, he said the moment I entered. Harriet is taking her entire portfolio to Palmer. Do you have any idea what that means for the company? For the people who work there? I'm aware, I replied calmly, just as I was aware of what it meant when you chose not to come to the hospital when I was dying. You weren't dying, he scoffed. It was a routine procedure. My medical records indicate otherwise. The surgeon said if I'd arrived an hour later, I likely wouldn't have survived. He waved dismissively. Everyone exaggerates in hospitals. It's about billing. Is that what you told yourself to justify abandoning an employee in crisis? That it was probably exaggerated? I was handling a critical company event, an event I organized, using materials I created, presenting ideas I developed. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. What do you want? Money? A recommendation? Name it so we can end this nonsense. I smiled then. Not the professional smile I'd worn for years, but something genuine and a little sad. What I want isn't something you can give me now, Roe. I wanted basic human decency when I needed it most. I wanted acknowledgement for my contributions. I wanted a workplace that valued people over presentations. So this is revenge, he said bitterly. Destroying everything I've built because your feelings were hurt. No, I replied. This is consequence. Everything happening now is the direct result of how you've treated people. I didn't tell Harriet to leave. She made that decision after seeing how you handled my departure and learning how you responded to my emergency. I stood up. I didn't destroy anything, Ro. I simply stepped aside and allowed your true leadership to be visible without me covering the gaps. You'll regret this, he threatened, rising as well. I'll make sure everyone in the industry knows what you did. Please do, I said calmly. Tell them exactly what happened. How your employee collapsed during a presentation. How you refused to leave a company retreat when informed she needed emergency surgery. How you never visited during her 8-day hospital stay. How you expected her to immediately resume full workload upon return. How you took credit for her work repeatedly. Please, share all those details widely. The color drained from his face as he realized the implications. Oh, and one more thing, I added, retrieving an envelope from my bag. This arrived this morning. The Industry Standards Committee has completed their initial review of workplace safety practices at your company. They've recommended a complete overhaul of emergency protocols and leadership training. The board has already voted to implement all recommendations. The board can't, they already did. Apparently, when the committee shared their findings, including testimony from multiple employees about similar experiences, the board realized the company faces significant liability risks under your leadership. His face contorted with rage. You planned this. All of it. From the moment you left that note. No, Ro. You planned it the moment you decided a keynote speech was more important than an employee's life. I simply ensured the consequences found their way home. As he stormed out, Constance entered. Having watched from the adjacent room, that's one of the most professional takedowns I've ever witnessed, she said with quiet admiration. 3 days later, I received an email from Pax. Ro had been placed on administrative leave, pending a comprehensive review of management practices. The board had appointed an interim director with a background in organizational psychology and workplace culture transformation. The company retreat was canceled that year. Its budget diverted to establishing proper medical response protocols and comprehensive staff wellness programs. An anonymous tip line had been established for reporting workplace concerns without fear of retaliation. Harriet's account transition to Palmer Innovations proceeded smoothly, largely because I had indeed left impeccable documentation of all processes and relationships. 5 more clients followed within the month. As for me, my new role at Palmer thrived. The emergency protocol proposal I submitted became a model adopted by several other companies in our industry. When a colleague experienced a family emergency during an important client presentation, Constance herself stepped in to cover, while arranging immediate support. Sometimes I wonder if my actions were too harsh. If Ro deserved the professional reckoning that followed. Then I remember lying alone in pre-op, signing my own consent forms, while knowing that no one was coming to support me during the most frightening moment of my life. The most satisfying revenge isn't about causing harm, but about redirecting the flow of consequences. It's about building something healthier, while allowing natural justice to find those who revealed their true priorities when you needed them most. My hand occasionally drifts to the scar on my abdomen, a permanent reminder that some lessons are carved into us, that we teach people how to treat us by what we accept, that sometimes the most powerful statement isn't what you say, but when you finally decide to walk away. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your own experiences with workplace loyalty, the good and the bad. Remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice, but by recognizing when you deserve better. No job should cost you your health or humanity. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply place a note on your desk and walk away.